If you are stuck on how to elevate your career and your everyday work leaves you feeling exhausted and disappointed, this podcast is for you. You're listening to Work Liberated, the intersection between personal transformation and career empowerment. Listen to industry experts who share valuable advice on dispelling burnout, anxiety, and stress in the workplace through life-changing and innovative strategies. Reconnect with your highest purpose, realign with your core values, and liberate your human spirit by unleashing your full potential in everything you do. Here's your host, Margaret Graziano.
Welcome to Work Liberated with Karen Norheim. And Karen, could you please tell us a little bit about you and the company you run?
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here. I am president and CEO of American Crane and Equipment Corporation. We're a leading manufacturer of overhead cranes and hoists. We're located in Pennsylvania, just about an hour outside of Philadelphia. Family-owned business. I'm the second generation running the company. Goodness. What else would I want to tell you? Overhead cranes. A lot of times when people think of overhead cranes, they think of mobile cranes outside. So what we build, while similar, is actually permanently installed inside of buildings. And some of our big customers include the energy industry, doing work in things like nuclear power. We also work in aerospace. We have equipment with NASA. And in addition, we do work with other just manufacturers in our local area as well. So very exciting.
Great. And so I met Karen on my journeys around the country with Vistage, which is a CEO mastermind group, and I'm one of their speakers. And in getting to know her, I was struck by the level of knowledge and passion that she has for organizational culture, which is why she's a guest today. And she is going to talk to us a little bit about how the culture of her company was built, and then the journey along the way, and then having to reinvigorate culture. So tell me about as a girl growing up with this business with your father running it. What was that like for you? Because that was one of the things that I found very interesting is your journey as a young woman. Learning about business, and then what you noticed, and then we'll keep diving in and out.
Okay. Well, my father's actually an immigrant from Norway. He came to the U.S. in his 20s, and he was a part of the group that founded American Crane, and he ended up turning it from a struggling business into a thriving enterprise. So big influence on my life. I remember walking around the shop as a kid and loving the smells of oil, and we do a lot of metal fabrication, just really, really enjoyable. Like I said, my dad was such a role model, entrepreneurial spirit, and just all around wonderful. What was interesting is I always wanted to be in business, and he always inspired me to want to be my own boss at some day, right? I didn't necessarily think I was going to go into the family business per se. So, he actually recruited me to come and work for him, and I was very reluctant. I was like, what are these cranes and hoists? This can't be, manufacturing. This doesn't sound all that glamorous. What is this? And it turns out I was very wrong about my reluctance. I was able to, or I am able through American Crane to really follow my passion for manufacturing, and really get to work with amazing people, such as my dad. And, I've been there now 20 years, probably actually getting close to 21 years. And it's been one of the best decisions of my life.
Wow. Great. So, how old were you when you took over running this business, like being the chief executive officer?
So, I had the title first of president and COO. So in a family business, when my father was going to do what he called retiring, which really was just still having his fingers in the business, mentoring us and being a part. He wanted to keep the title of CEO. So I had president and COO, and that was right around 2019 that I got that title, just in time for the global pandemic, where I was effectively running the company, on my own with his guidance per se, but he wasn't involved into the day to day. And then, my father, we we actually lost him about a year and a half ago. And at that point in time, I then did transition into president and CEO. And the company is now owned today with me and my sister. So we're a certified woman-owned business and woman-owned business enterprise.
Yep, that's awesome. We're a WBE process, but we did it. So there you are, you're being mentored and coached by your dad. And there's so many questions I could ask, but I want to go back to when you joined the organization and even when you were being mentored and coached to lead and have this leadership role. What was the culture that he had built?
Well, we had a good culture, as far as it was effective, and we were a smaller organization than we are today. But it was really word of mouth. We always go back to our Norwegian heritage and sort of that Viking history. And, my dad came back from Norway on a trip and he had this big sign. It was called Viking Laws. And it was, it was very, very applicable to business. I could have a whole other conversation on it, but he's like, Karen, this is our culture. This is it. And he was right, because our culture was unwritten code of conduct passed down from generation to generation. It wasn't written down. Maybe at the time we had started to identify like some core values, but it really was undefined as far as locking it in on paper. He was the culture. He was creating that vibe. He had a great vision for what that felt like, and, kind of doing that all organically. And then as I came in, and actually we really started to do the reboot of our culture around 2018, a little bit earlier than 2019, because I saw that, in the future, when my dad wasn't going to be around forever, and what was going to happen to our culture if he wasn't there, kind of having that founder's legacy, leading it forward. So we went through a lot of work to lock it in and define what our culture was or is, I should say, and really put words and meaning to that. And that. Thank goodness we did that, because it was just, a couple years before the pandemic hit. So that really helped us to survive those storms. And then, of course, with losing him about, like I said, almost a year and a half ago, we survived that as well. All from spending the time, I like to call it being the gardener, because this is a labor of love when you work on culture. It's like farming. Doesn't really end. You plant seeds, you nurture them, you grow them, you harvest them, and then you do it all again. And the cycle kind of, is never ending, as I'm sure you know.
Yeah. So first of all, I am sorry for your loss. I know just from the little bit that we've spent together, the passion and compassion you have for your family and reverence. So want to acknowledge that. So in this unwritten code of conduct, the Viking laws, what was like, give me the experience of being a new person who comes into the unwritten, because there's a lot of clients that, or pre-clients, prospects that will call me and say, well, we don't have anything written down and it's awesome. And then I'll talk to somebody else in the company and they'll say, it's awesome sometimes, but it's not awesome all the time. So give us a sense of what it was like to work in this unwritten rules, and then what worked and didn't work about that. And then I'll ask more questions about how you made the transition.
I think for that period of time, there was a lot of emulation of the leader. So leading by example, I think that worked very well. There are some of the things that weren't as great as our communication wasn't always perfect, or I guess it's hard to say that when is communication perfect, but we did have some difficulties just kind of communicating between departments and people, which is, making those assumptions, I think, that people understood or that they knew what was going on. And I think that's where the danger zone comes, because people can have very different interpretations of things. I like to think of culture as behavior. And if you don't really define those behaviors well, they can be interpreted a couple different ways. So we also probably while we were lucky, and again, really had done amazing things as a company, grown, adding new people, we had an onboarding process, but really not well defined, more of the safety for manufacturing and a few, shirts that you got here and there, not a real locked in process. Again, we were lucky because we still had at that point in time a very high retention rate of employees, which spoke to taking care of people. Taking care of your people was really the vision that my dad had. You make sure people have a great place to work, and then you let them go be awesome, right? So, but what happened, what I think that another downside to that is because we weren't intentional, there was the ability for people to hijack the culture and turn it into what they wanted, which I do think we did have occasionally in different areas. So it's, again, worked very well, but definitely had some areas for improvement, and was really led by that vision of my father and his very personal mentoring too of people.
So the unwritten culture is treat people well and then let them be and spend time with them, mentor them, make sure that they're equipped. And so all that worked, but what didn't work is sometimes certain people would turn it into whatever they wanted it to be, and that didn't work. And so how did you, because he was still around when you transitioned the culture, so that the Viking law was not the end all be all. What was that conversation like?
Well, we started by trying to come up with, just some wording around what did this taking care of people and what we did as a company feel like. And I came across the word grit, which really resonated with me. And, grit is the perseverance to keep going despite obstacles, moving things your way. We do a lot of very complicated projects, very specialized lifting equipment from engineering all the way through to manufacturing, installation. So really, we may come against, just in the nature of doing our job, some really difficult things that we have to overcome. We don't make the same thing twice. So again, that word grit really resonated. We ended up turning that into a mantra of grit matters, perseverance, heart, and integrity. And I think the transition of it was really kind of teasing out and vocalizing. And I say vocalizing because as a CEO, I'm the chief reminding officer, and you have to vocalize and have ways that you can clearly communicate, hey, this is what when we say grit matters, here's what we mean by this. Or when we talk about being humble, it means, you're willing to sweep the floor, stuff like that, just having to have that verbalization. So that was a big part of it. Once we defined that vision, mission, behaviors piece of it, we then rolled it out to the company, had meetings with every employee. I threw everything at it because I knew we had to lock this in, from T-shirts to, I think at the time we had weekly meetings about the culture, just trying to get people comfortable. A lot of what that was really doing was, communicating two of these lessons that my dad taught me. I always say he taught me to be a gardener. Again, it's my job to make sure that our company is an environment that allows everyone to thrive. He also taught me to be a Viking, which is to be able to go out and fight the business battles and do the things that are what we do for our customers. But the crux is that the Vikings were actually farmers, right? So they were more farmers than they were warriors. So you have to do the prep of the gardening and have that bounty behind you so you can go out and fight those business battles. So learning those lessons and communicating that to everybody, the importance of the two. And then the other really big thing why my eyes opened and I was pushing so hard for us to do this is I had our buyer come up to me one day, and we have a very close relationship. It's probably in the 2017 timeframe. And she said, "Can I ask you this personal question?" And I said, "Sure, you can ask me anything." And she said, "Karen, what are you going to do when your dad is gone? Are you going to sell the business?" And I was floored because I'd been there at the time, I think it was almost 15 years, putting my blood, sweat, and tears into this, committed. But if she didn't know that I was committed to the business, then others didn't know as well. So there's a twofold piece here, showing the employees that there is continuity and that we're going to keep these great things that we have. We're going to lock them in so that we can build on them for the future. And also letting them know that there's continuity in me being committed to the business and going to be there, and that our family was committed to the business as well.
That's great. So the chief reminding officer, when I work with CEOs, I remind them all the time that the minimum amount of reminding is 7, but honestly, it's like every week in every meeting. So when did you get that you needed to be the chief reminding officer, and how do you weave reminding into your everyday work life?
I was probably, I'm always about, can I have a little help from my friends? And I look to others who have done this well and try to learn from them. And so I had a chance to, from my Vistage group, see how some other people had been working on their culture and having great success. And it kind of stuck with me, this idea of making sure that we're communicating, reminding, talking, and making it a part of the fabric of who we are, that we're talking about these things. And so that has turned into regular. So we do a Friday email that talks about the culture, talks about what's going, a core value of the month, talks about what's going on, celebrates the new orders that we're getting, talks about hiring, all of those pieces. We do a Monday communication, which is a video, which again is celebrating birthdays and anniversaries. It's talking about, might be a safety topic one week. It might be about orders another. It might be about a core value or a behavior that we really believe in. And then we also do trivia on Wednesdays. It's just a quick email, like kind of again asking, and those are just the locked in, always happening. In addition, in the beginning of every one of my leadership team meetings, I talk about the core value and highlight my thoughts for our leadership team. We also have, depending on the group, bi-monthly and monthly meetings where we talk about a value. We let an employee actually share what it means for them, to what the particular core value is of the month, or what our vision or mission is, some piece of that, and share a little bit of themselves. And then, I'm always wearing Grit logo apparel. I'm always bringing it up. We use the word grit in a lot of our internal conversations. And I think as the leader, we really, and we're executive presence, right? I'm always there. I'm always on point. People are looking to me, and they're looking to the other leaders to take, notes on what's going on. That's where emulation of behavior can happen. So I just make sure I'm always talking about it. Like, I might get tired of saying some of the same things over and over, but it's important using the same language, communicating with employees, making sure that I do things like, making eye contact with people and saying hello, and just really making a conscientious, intentional effort to communicate and behave the way that we are asking everyone to be, right? Like just trying to emulate that as best as possible. Not always perfect, no human is, but that's, I think, an important part of the communication of it too.
Yeah, and all of those, the architecture, I would say, is the different things you're doing, and like Monday morning and Wednesday, the architecture is, what I'm hearing, is in service of creating that alignment. So is grit, I understand what grit means. Is grit also a acronym for something?
No, we don't have it as an acronym, just strictly the word. Just really felt that it represented myself, my dad, and our company. I mean, we literally, we'll roll up our sleeves and pull together to get around anything that gets in the way of us getting our equipment to our customers. So, just really resonated as an individual word.
So do you have any stories about a new employee who maybe wasn't demonstrating grit, or didn't understand that the obstacles are part of the game? We're in the game of obstacles. Every game has obstacles. So yep. Even in game theory, you design your obstacles. So do you have a story of somebody that didn't understand that, and you used the grit concept to teach them to instead of looking at it as a problem, to look at it as part of the game?
I think that happens all the time. To give you a specific example, just working through supply chain challenges, right, of things that are going on right now in the industry at large, in our space, and having to not only figure out how we're going to get parts and micromanaging our vendors and working on it, but then also having to communicate back to the customer. And so, talking with our project management team, who does an excellent job, and just making sure that they know that this is part of what they have to do. They have to remove this. This is the game, and they know that there are two very new is not maybe couple years, newer project managers who really get it. And I think by having the ability to point to, hey, when one of our key pieces is that our job is to make our customers' lives easier, and that we do what we say we're going to do, and we do it well, and we do it on schedule. So that means that we hold up our commitments. That's a big part of who we are. If we tell you you're going to do something, we're going to do it. If something happens, like supply chain issues, and there's going to be a surprise, we just immediately go to the customer and talk that to them and say, hey, listen, this is what we're hitting up against. We're going to work through this. These are the solutions we've already figured out. And I use that a lot too, is that don't come to me with a problem unless you've come up with a few solutions too, right? Start thinking ahead instead of just delivering up the issue. So definitely that is a part of our normal conversations and how we navigate spaces. And then we have deepened our onboarding. Now we do truly have an onboarding process, which includes training on, not just the company in general, but also on what it means to be a part of our culture. And we pay a lot of attention to who we hire, and really making sure that we're getting the right people on our team, and that they align with, who we are and what we are passionate about.
So when you look at the word grit, what are some adjectives or behaviors that you interview for so you can determine if somebody actually has grit? I don't do a lot of interviews at the moment, but I will say I know that we talk about a key thing is flexibility, right? You need to be able, we're a company of about 170 employees. So we're not super small, but we're also not, we're also, what am I trying to say? We're not super big. We're not super small. We're somewhere in that middle space, which means that I like to say, go back to my Viking analogy, that we can, raise our sails and we adjust to the wind. So we're always checking the wind to say, where is it going? And we're agile enough and flexible enough to shift directions and pivot if needed. So the ability to be able to handle that is a big deal. Attitude is huge. Just, having a positive attitude, being willing to learn, being curious. Those are very important things. Having integrity, and the definition of integrity would revolve around being honest. That goes back to that no surprises, making sure you're being honest, being accountable. Like, hey, something happened and, I need help, or this happened and, it's my fault. You got to be able to take accountability, because stuff's going to happen. But if we don't know what's going on, we can't navigate through them. So that also is creating that psychologically safe space for people. Follow through, looking for examples of follow through, and also, passion or passion's a difficult word to think about as well. But I think that can kind of play also into this, looking for curiosity and willingness to learn, and willingness to evolve with us, because we are in the process of, and I think we will always be in the process of building the business for where we're going, not for where we are. And I don't think that's ever going to end, right? We're trying to always evolve, and that road to success is always under construction. Brings that to mind. Yeah, so it sounds like a couple other things that are baked in is proactive, solution-oriented, not being the victim to what's happening, but this is what's happening and I've got to do something about it. And then the growth mindset. It just sounds like that's how you operate, and that's how you need people to operate. So there's a pillow or something behind you that says corporate hippie. What does that mean?
Well, I'm probably not what you would classify as a hippie. But corporate hippie to me means that I can be my own authentic version of what CEO is. And, that I'm going to, to me, that means caring about our people. They really are the most important part of our business. Finding a way to create this environment where they can work. And it's my job to constantly be looking and tweaking and checking, that things are set up in the best way that they can be. So I guess it's kind of going against the grain. I'm also, there's not many women in my industry or in especially in the crane industry. So, just kind of, I've never had a problem. I don't know if going against the grain is, but being kind of an outsider and breaking the rules a little and trying things new. And honestly, the pillow is all about not taking yourself too seriously.
Awesome. Okay. So the Monday morning video, is that always you, or do you have, it's a different person each week, or how do you guys work that out?
So the videos started as an add-on during COVID, because we needed to touch people, and really was the start of making sure we communicate. And then it evolved into a production that, basically that we're doing every week. And now it does have very specific segments. It talks about, we celebrate any birthdays and anniversaries that week of any employee. We then go in and talk about, we highlight whatever the core value is for the month. And then it does change in content. So I probably do a message about once a month, and then we'll pick a highlight of a department, because that's the other thing. I think one thing that my dad always assumed, and as you get bigger, you have to really remember this, like not everybody knows each other, and not everybody knows what other departments are doing, and you have to share all those stories. So we do one video per month is about any new orders that came in, or any shipments, anything of interest about the work that we do, because people take pride in that. And, really, making sure they get to hear about where the equipment's going. What is it actually getting to use? We got to work on our equipment is used to work on the Orion project, part of the Artemis NASA project that's been going on and in the news. And it's great to tell our employees this so they can get really excited about it.
Yeah.
So really, sharing those stories. So we also do, our head of service will do a conversation. He'll talk about what they're working on in their group. Our sales group will do that. We do safety messages. We try to change it up to keep the content fresh. And then we always include any positions we're hiring. We let employees know, whether for themselves, but also they're our best source of recruitment. And then wrap it in. I am very intentional about our company messaging. So we have both an internal and external 3-prong messaging that we define as the leadership team. And I always try to make sure that we're weaving that into, it doesn't change a whole lot, maybe changes every couple of quarters, but really making sure that all of those pieces are there all together.
Great. So how long is that video?
It can range anywhere from 3 minutes to 6 minutes, depending on what the content is.
And do you take time to see who's watching it, or is that not, you're not interested in the statistics? You just want to deliver it, and it's up to them to watch it or not?
It's up to them to watch it or not. And my philosophy on this is, even if they don't open it and watch it, they still got an email that was from the company specifically to them. So there's even just the ping of, the dopamine of this was for me. And I think that alone can help. But yes, we also do want them. And people talk about the videos with each other. They'll bring it up. They resonate with some of our sort of mantras that we put in there. And so I look at it from some of my background is in marketing, that we have to, market this as well to the people. Now, I do want to know how many people are looking. I think that's a great metric to track for KPI. And we've actually since shifted. We started very, very, what's the word? Very gritty, right? When we first did it, with just using iPhones and cutting together video through a simple service. Now we've evolved where we actually have added to our marketing department so that they can do their own video editing in Premiere and moving that whole piece along. And before it was just a Google link, on a shared Google Drive. Now we've evolved into actually leveraging one of our marketing softwares to deliver it, because now we can actually see then who clicks on it and how we're doing. Because, if the content is stale, shame on us. We at best make it more energizing. And I think that's just a part of how it goes. And we always had employees that were in different buildings and some that were always on the road. So I think this just is a great enhancement to making sure that everybody feels like they're part of, the organization.
That's great. So, Karen, you've been a wealth of knowledge about not just talking about culture, but implementing and living it. So, thank you so much. Last and final question is, what is the most fulfilling part of being a CEO to you?
I think for me, it's watching people grow and watching the organization grow. Again, it goes back to that gardening piece and watching things get nurtured and evolved. Whether it's, for us, we're entering a new industry in the semiconductor industry with clean room cranes. So seeing that and all the hard work that went in that nurture and come to life is exciting. To seeing people evolve and really our leadership team over the last several years evolving and having success and really my father would be so proud of us and how far we've come and where we're at today and what we're doing and all the exciting work that's going on. So for me, it's that the ability to nurture and then, see the fruits of your labor unfold.
Awesome. Well, I have an executive offsite with one of the largest semiconductor companies that actually they would be a co-seller into the clean rooms. They deal with the solutions and all that stuff. So
cool.
Offline, I might do a intro. So thank you so much. Thanks for the inspiration. And if you know of anybody who'd be a great guest as a CEO who's actually doing the gardening for culture, that's where the podcast is going now for the next 6 months, is real-time CEOs who are walking their talk.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I'll be happy to send some your way and excited to listen because I'm still learning too, right? Like the journey never ends here.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Work Liberated. May these nuggets of wisdom from the most inspiring human potential catalysts today guide you in becoming someone who can work exceptionally with others and accomplish goals inside the collective. Continue your journey as a fulfilled and self-actualized person by listening to more episodes at www.workliberated.org. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a positive rating, and share with your friends. That's all for now. See you on the next one.